What happens in DC stays in DC. Hopefully, that's not true for the Epstein files. Blaze News The Mandate starts right now. Welcome in. I'm Jill Savage. We're here in our nation's capital, of course, joined by our editor-in-chief, Matthew Peterson.
Good to be back.
And our DC politics editor, Chris Bedford.
Always here.
Always here representing. We are the ones that are here visiting. But you guys, there's a story that's ongoing. I don't know if you've paid attention or not, but over the weekend, Trump actually drew his line in the sand on the Epstein files, and he went out and posted on Truth Social that AG Pam Bondi is doing a fantastic job, that the Epstein files were created by the Russia hoaxers. So needless to say, this statement was not very popular with his supporters. Now, it received more replies than likes. They called that a ratio online. So this is the first time that he's actually ever been ratioed on his own platform. So gentlemen, when we look at this, where do we go from here, right? This story has been ongoing now for over a week, yet now we get the re-up. We get to start talking about it like it's a brand new thing because of this post that we saw on Truth Social on Saturday night.
Well, look, I'm not going to make any bones about it. I mean, certainly the way in which this was rolled out, the way in which it was initially rolled out by DOJ, I'd say that was botched. But in terms of what's happening now, yeah, this wasn't my favorite post by Trump. Not everyone can have a banger every single time, which he generally does. He's the world historical king of posting. Among the posters, he is unmatched. But here we see Trump drawing a line in the sand. You said, yeah, I mean, he's also defending his own people, which is understandable. Right now, you have the left, like ravenous wolves, finally realizing, cluing in that, oh, there's something here and trying to attack. And so, of course, Trump is going to defend his pick. He's going to defend Bondi. And also, it seems to be the policy of the administration is this is something that we're gonna move on from. And he says that in a serious way. And also, he mentions here that these files, this information has already been doctored and used by people who are enemies of the administration and enemies of MAGA. There's no doubt some truth to that. So is this satisfactory to a lot of people out there? No. On the other hand, there are reasons that he wants to move on. And yeah. I don't think any of them have to do with Trump himself being involved with Epstein. I think there's larger reasons.
Yeah, if he was involved with Epstein, we would know it. And that's how the Biden administration would have dropped this, and they don't care what impact it has on the royal family, and they don't care what impact it has on retired Democratic presidents who are already somewhat persona non grata, except when they need to show up at rallies like Bill Clinton. They would have done that. They would have burned down half the country, as they actually kind of did, in order to stop him from becoming president again. To Trump, this is a distraction. This is something that's pulling away from what ought to have been an extremely glorious week for the administration. And honestly, it was like an incredible amount of accomplishments for this administration. The things that they were pushing, the agenda that they were setting is now unleashed. Now we have to wait to see what the deportation numbers actually start to look like. But that's his anger here. The problem is they screwed it up so bad that they're going to have to do something. They're going to have to release something. And guess what? A little bit might have worked the first time. But now it's not. Now you got to come home with flowers. And honestly, that's actually not quite going to be enough to make her not angry anymore. You're going to have to go all out. You're going to have to watch Secret Lives of Mormon Housewives with your wife every night for 5 days, which means more than just a little bit. More, it's a serious tax on the mind and the soul, but it's going. That's the position they put themselves in. They should have handled it differently. They didn't. I mean, heck, they could have just said this was military intelligence. Sorry, right. It's over.
And that I think that would have satisfied a lot of people more
like,
so than the way that it did. Yeah, because I think that at the end of the day, of course, that's probably what we're all talking about here. But right now, it feels like this isn't just the Epstein files, right? That's the topic that this is focused on. But it feels like this has turned into a bigger issue of trust in the administration, right? This is what we voted for. This isn't what we voted for. when the people at home are reading this narrative, because it was so botched on the delivery, and there wasn't just the, hey, these are the things that we're doing. I think that if you actually go through and read Trump's post on True Social, and you do get to the, okay, well, there's more here than meets the eye. If they had gone with that narrative out of the gates, we might be sitting here a little different a week later. We might not have this conversation, but right now we're looking at trust in the administration as a whole.
Yeah, this is the key point. What people voted for and what they want is to reform these agencies, reform the departments of government that have lost their trust. Most significantly, those departments that actually have to do with the basis of the rule of law in America at the federal level. That is the Department of Justice. The name of the department is the Department of Justice. It stands for justice. So the problem here is that this was promises made about, oh, we have all this information, and then all of a sudden, no, we don't, and there's nothing to see here. And then Trump actually, as you point out, gives a little bit more on this post, a little more color to it. So I don't think this is a insurmountable obstacle, but I do think that it's not a good look for Pam Bondi in the way she handled it. We have to be honest about this. And also, you have to give people something, as you're saying, because there's a lot here that we know about already. Look, this has been around for a long time. We know a lot about Epstein for all the mystery of it. We know a lot about what he was involved with, who he interacted with. And okay, so maybe you can't put out some perfect bit of information about it, but you got to give us something. And the problem here was that memo was a very weird memo that they put out in a very weird context. And it was sort of saying, there's nothing to see here. And everyone knows, well, that's not true, right? We know there's something to see there. So, you have to pick your battles, though. Chris has made this point earlier in the show. You have to pick your battles about what you want to focus on. There's a lot to focus on when it comes to justice in the past, right? Epstein stands for that. And so you got to give people something, even if you want to focus on other things. And I don't think that's particularly hard to do, but it's a complicated situation because you probably have at least 2 intelligence agencies, probably international concerns. You have a lot of people who are implicated that everyone's been talking about, from Musk, on out for a long time. Reid Hoffman, right, his nemesis, he's always saying he was going there, we're going to release this. So it's a messy situation, but I think at the end of the day, if you really want to get over it, you give the people something, and you show a little bit more, acknowledge a little bit more. Don't treat people like they're stupid and they don't know what's going on.
You can't say, listen, you can't read my emails, you can't look what's behind this door. You're not allowed to. It's private. It's personal. Okay, you know what? Actually, there's nothing there.
Yeah,
there's nothing there. It's like, that is a fib that may have worked earlier in the evening, but it no longer works now.
Yeah.
Well, when you go from the files are on my desk to here are the binders, right? Having everybody go out there just not too far from here.
It was a Curb Your Enthusiasm moment.
Over at the White House, go ahead and look at this. It's, of course, there are going to be redactions in there, but we'll give you the binders full of Epstein. Well, and now they're like,
Binders of women.
Just kidding. Right, exactly. Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you, Mitt Romney. The tone, the way that they've gone about it, there are 20 other ways that we could have done this where I think people might be like, oh, okay, we understand what you're saying. It's just the order of operations that we see here is a really hard one to defend.
So I've got I don't know if I'm white-pilled or black-pilled. I actually don't know which one on this because I'm the guy.
I think you're white-pilled.
Am I? Yeah.
Yeah, because you don't care.
I don't
No.
care. I don't think this administration will be defined by crimes from the 90s and 2000s that it prosecuted. I think it'll be defined by whether or not it can reindustrialize America, change our trade regime, and deport the foreign invasion. If they can do that, they can end birthright citizenship. If the wall is finished in 4 years, if the deportation numbers get to where the money now allows it to get, people have been rightfully complaining that the deportations have been more show than tell over the last 6 months, but that's because there was no money. Now you got $47 billion. I want to see something for that. If you can do these sorts of things, you change the country that my daughter grows up in. If you prosecute the Epstein list, unfortunately, powerful people will still do awful things and intelligence agencies will still leverage it. It's old. But what will change the country for my children? That's the agenda.
Yeah, so I would agree with you that the main issue is mass deportation. That's still at the heart of everything in the administration.
Stephen Miller was right.
Stephen Miller is
always right.
usually right about everything. The one caveat here is that if you're not going to go into Epstein, and I agree, there's other things that should be the tip of the spear for the intelligence agencies. Here's the problem for a lot of people in Washington is you do have to actually reform these agencies. I mean, if you're going to save America, you have to reform these agencies because take Russia collusion, take what they were allowed to do. They were allowed to ruin an entire presidency and thwart the will of the people, really in one of the most egregious forms that we've ever seen in American history. This is in many ways far worse than Watergate, what they did. So you're not going to change that
Speaking of
without
CIA operations.
yeah, with people like Brennan, punishing people like that, but even more than that, without structurally changing the way in which these agencies operate, which is almost tiresome to say when you're sitting in this town because people just don't think that's possible. They don't think it's desirable, and they think it's way out of bounds. It's just not even in the realm of possibility. But that's what people voted for. So what I would say is, okay, if you don't want to make Epstein the tip of the spear, fine. But this is not going to go away in the sense that people really want to see change at FBI, at CIA, et cetera, and they want to believe in the Department of Justice again. And what we've seen in the last few weeks, like that ain't it, Chief. That's not going to work.
And the president, I think he underestimates the disappointment here and what's been
Yes.
built in. That silly gay nickname, Daddy. But it's based on the idea of you're here to fix all the things.
Right.
We trust you to take care of the bad guys. You're gonna tell us the truth. Maybe sometimes Daddy is gonna say bedtime.
Right.
It's so creepy to say it. I can't believe the NATO guy said it. It's like, oh, that's not translating right. You must not be an English first language speaker. But there was a huge amount of trust that Donald Trump would not be swayed by outside forces, particularly in the realm of intelligence, which is what even the Democrats with their bills right now and their investigations, I kind of have to admit, is just so obviously what was going on here.
Right.
But somehow he got to a point where he said, we're not going to do it. A friend of mine one time asked him years ago, 6 or 7 years ago, about the UFO files. He says, the only time I've ever seen him shaken, just visibly irritated, put off of his mark, didn't quite, just like, and just nervous and didn't want to talk about it. We all know that there are certain aspects of modern American governance, which ever since LBJ and Eisenhower have been doing things that we're not comfortable with. I think we're adult enough to be able to start to have some of the conversations, at least to say, like, listen, it exists, but we're not going to talk about it, as opposed to shut up, it's not real.
Yes,
and that's what we got.
That's what this is almost like an argument in a relationship where I don't like your tone, as Seinfeld once said of a woman saying to him, I don't like your tone.
That's an important thing.
And the tone matters here because what the issue is that you take on, the excuse to actually reform these agencies for real, right? That could be 1,000 different things. They've done a lot of evil things over the last decades. But this really is about reforming the deep state, reforming the administrative state now. And at some point, you're going to make things a lot worse, like John Roberts on the court, by saving the institutions and not actually going in and rooting things out. And like you said, it's treating people like they're children. And maybe you could say, like back in the 50s or 60s, TV just came on and people were, becoming aware, and you'd cause mass panic or something by taking away faith in these institutions. But now we live in a world in which people do not trust those institutions. That's already the case. And so the danger is, if they don't trust those institutions, who will they trust? They will trust a leader who comes in, or some transformation of American government, right or left, into something else, which, could be good, could be bad. But the most likely thing is it will be bad. If you want to reform the system, you have to do that for real. You have to treat people like they're adults. The American people are ready for this. Most people are more cynical than I think most elites realize, right? I mean, there's a certain sense of this has always been the case. It's like the Vietnam War, right? The nuance of most people with the Vietnam War was, I'm patriotic, but also our government is screwed up. And I haven't lost my faith in America, or I haven't renounced my citizenship. I'm still patriotic, but we're deeply flawed. So let's address those deep flaws at some point. And that's something that I think is, it's easy to say, it's easy for people to desire on air and to bitch about on air. It's a lot harder to actually do in a system that is so large and so weighted down with bureaucracy and with potential battles around every corner. But whether you want to do this or not, what's going to happen, I would predict in the next few years, is that there's going to be a series of battles where it really comes down to it to even, effectively get through Trump's agenda on things that no one disagrees about. You're going to have to face this thing down. It's not going to go away. So,
And yet, the thing that I
let's
think
bring it
that
on.
makes it so awkward for the administration and for anyone in power, is if you expose everything that happened, you have to talk about who did it. And not everyone's dead. They're simply not.
Yes.
And I have no real issue with the American intelligence agencies using dark arts that sometimes cause innocents to be lost to have leverage over foreign leaders. But when you start talking about foreign governments having leverage over American presidents, well, that's a different matter.
Yeah.
That's something that actually, and U.S. senators and powerful people in technology, and it's not just us. Then that's where people start to say, like, all right, like CIA, whatever you do around the United Nations, I don't care. But I really do care what happened here because it involved a lot of different people. And honestly, we don't know who was involved.
Yeah, well, 1963 was a long time ago, and we're only getting information about the JFK assassination, like actually coming through in declassifying documents now. To your point, there are still there's obviously a lot of people alive when we talk about the Jeffrey Epstein cases. But when I look at this, right? Okay, so Trump and the administration, they need to switch this narrative, right? We want you to actually go after the deep state. We want to actually get some of the bad guys. But if you're MAGA at large right now, what do you need to see, right? Is this going to be a turning point? I think this could remain to be seen to see how the next few months shake out. But what if you're Trump trying to appease your base right now, and you know that MAGA is upset about this, right? Whether they're giving you all this information or not, I think it's going to seep in that you're going to understand that people aren't exactly okay with everything just moving on. How do you shift the narrative right now and actually do the things that you said you were going to do when you were getting elected?
Well, here, I mean, I don't think I said to a journalist from a not right-leaning paper the other day, I mean, this is not, as Chris has written about, I mean, this is not, a massive civil war within MAGA. Or this doesn't threaten the midterms yet or anything like that. But it is a ding, right? So there's a lot of time between now and then. And what I would say is there's plenty of areas in which the administration just needs to execute on its agenda. And if the administration executes on its agenda, it keeps up and doesn't waver on mass deportations and the core parts of what Trump has been talking about since forever, and it keeps doing that, it will be fine. But if there is more like this, right, coming, then that could end up being a problem. But right now, the irony of this is that, as Chris said, the administration is sitting on top. Like, we're talking about one issue within an administration that has had nothing but wins since they started. So it's going to take a lot more to really make a dent when it comes to actual voting. This is a debate within the winning majority bloc that just took over America. That's 55 to 60% of Americans at this point.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I don't know how much they're able to give us, which is why I think this is so bungled. I also have a sneaking suspicion, despite living on the internet myself, that this lives online. That a lot of, I called some good friends whose opinions I really trust. I said, you have signal chat brain over the weekend. You've got Twitter brain. You spend it, I tell you, my parents and my uncles and my cousins who are Republican voters, except for the few, are probably going to gripe about this over cigars at our family reunion, but it is not the focus point. It is not what they're talking about around the dinner table. It is not what they're talking about with their wives and kids. It is not part of their daily lives. The things that are the aspects of the administration which they're promising to execute on, which is going after the colleges, changing American industry, changing the way we pay taxes, changing the way that we interact with foreigners who are here illegally, cracking down on rules, showing that the United States is capable of being involved in foreign countries and foreign conflicts without having to get committed to rebuilding, that we're able to just slam limbs in the door until they need to be amputated and then walk away and not care, making NATO bow, making Harvard scurry, making medals be withdrawn from fake swimmers, showing that the lies are actually true, the lies are actually, truth is actually lies or whatever, exposing the transgender stuff, extremely important things, and that's what this admin is doing. Those wins will matter more in the midterms.
It will be a topic of discussion, certainly here in the Beltway, but I'm sure that everybody still, if you are very online, you're still going to care about it, at least for a little bit, at least for a little bit longer. Well, we'll get back to the show in just a second, but let's talk about bourbon first, because there are some bourbons that are out there chasing trends, but Flying Ace chases legacy. This is straight bourbon the way that it's meant to be. It's bold and balanced and unapologetically American. There's no gimmicks or fluff. It's just real whiskey made for people who still believe in hard work, high standards, and doing things the right way. So whether you're winding down after a long day or raising a glass with good company, Flying Ace delivers every time. And it's not about hype, it's about heritage, and it's about getting back to what bourbon was always supposed to be. So if that sounds like you're kind of poor, it's time to level up. You can go buy online at flyingacespirits.com and use the code BLAZE for free shipping. So let's go ahead and shift gears now to one of your favorite topics, Bedford, because we look at the Beltway brief. You talk about the Democrats a lot. Let's go ahead and let's switch over to some of the Democrats, because you said that they're actually on track for a violent implosion this month. So what do we have to look forward to? Because the Democrats, we haven't had a lot of riot season, right? But things are starting to pick up little by little.
Yeah, they haven't gotten the mass movement that they needed. They wanted the mass movement, but I got news for you. Like, the people who they relied on for the mass movement last time, 60% in favor of Trump. They're even if you're talking about the criminal underclass that helped make the protests into looting fests, are pretty satiated by the lack of MS-13 in the neighborhood. There's the anger and the rage is not there in the broader American public in that awful summer of 2020 and beyond. But the Democrats don't know what to do. They're really playing very closely with violence. And actually, they're not playing closely. They're openly antagonizing it. They're openly calling for it. Mm-hmm. It was really obvious from the very beginning that, and as much as people like to talk about violent rhetoric, that the actual calls to violence were being met with real violence. You have multiple ambushes of police officers over the month. Multiple ambushes of police officers. An officer was shot in the neck. One of the protesters opened fire, it looks like, on camera during the raid on the weed farm on police. You had 15 thin-wristed Antifa members, all kitted up, attack, who were beaten back, thank God, by the police. And at the same time, you have top Democrats, like the minority House leader, saying we need to unmask them. We need to make their personal identities targetable. They are openly saying we need violent insurrection. That's not a funny thing, insurrection in the city. But they're saying we need it. Their base is pushing it onward, saying I want to see congressmen who are unafraid to get shot at ICE detainment centers. This is pre-Civil War stuff. I mean, heck, I was a Lincoln Fellow. That's where we met, at the Claremont Institute. We talked a lot about the lead-up to the American Civil War. This is 1960s pre-Civil War stuff, but the difference between the 1960s and the more similarity to the Civil War pre-lead-up is that there are leaders in the other side who want it.
Right.
And in the 1960s, even the mayor of Chicago said, clear out of the park, you dirty hippies, and ordered the cavalry in. You're not getting that this time. You didn't get it in the 1850s, and it's extremely dangerous.
Yeah, so, I mean, if you look at both right and left over the last 20 years, what you see is a lot of tension within the right, and that tension is now over. And it was over at the convention after the assassination attempt when Trump fully took over the Republican Party on his route to his second win. So here, the Republican Party is sort of stabilized. So what you have is populism sweeping the country. You have both, the establishment on both sides being attacked. On the left, that's by the radical progressives, the people who are supporting violence now. So the sensible thing would be sort of a Fetterman move, right, on the part of the left and the Democrats right now. And it would be very easy to move to a kind of middle and say, look, we reject this progressive stuff. It went too far. But what you see is that that's not happening at all. You get a lot of people in the middle who are confused, the sort of Pelosi's of the world, the Schumers of the world, who are quieted down a bit, but they're not in charge anymore. And the people who are in charge, and you see it in Gavin Newsom. He's the best example of this. Gavin Newsom wants to break away. You can almost see he wants to be a bro. He wants to go on the podcast. He wants to renounce the trans thing. He wants to weasel his way out of the progressive agenda. But can he do that? No. By all appearances right now, no, they cannot do that.
No one backed him up when he tried.
Exactly.
No one backed.
Exactly.
Not on the record, at least.
And that's where all of a sudden you have this, you can say it's a minority, right? But it's the violent minority, and that's your 1850s scenario where these people are advocating for violence. Violence is increasing when it comes to these federal officials, even as the Democratic Party's popularity is dwindling throughout the country in key demographics. So what you have is that 1850s sort of mishmash vibe, where the good news is you have a reigning coalition that is on the right, but we do not see signs of the pendulum swinging back on the left. We see a bunch of violent activists, people advocating for it, no one able to say no, people like Gavin flirting with, can we just do this thing in the middle? And whenever they do it, there is no support. And so, on we hurtle, and we're going to have to keep a close eye on this in the years to come.
And you're talking about demographics and numbers. We look at the support for all the deportation numbers right now. Actually, if you go through and look at Hispanics, they're up to 50% right now, right? They're like, no, deport them all. We don't want them here if they're not supposed to be here. And then Black support is actually up to 53%. So some people would look at this and say those are historically Democratic voters right there. So even when you look at the priorities of the Trump administration, it's actually overlapping with some of the areas that you would actually look and say these are typically going to be Democrats.
Yeah, and the Democrats have dropped the ball. I mean, they've become the party of white women. And James Carville is basically the only one who's out there willing to say it. And they hate him for it. Him and Rahm Emanuel, who I kind of like Rahm, that lunatic dude out there in Chicago. Yeah, the Democrats' approval ratings have dropped to 35% across demographics of Black men, Hispanic men, working class, across all demographics.
And isn't that a number that's just going to be locked in for them anyway? Like 35%, no matter what, are just going to say, we are Democratic supporters. This is what we're going to do. I don't care what your policies are on any given day.
Like the 14% of people who don't want to remove the dead from Medicaid rolls.
Yes.
You're not going to sway that. It's like, oh, what? Really? It's like, don't take my health care.
It's an anchor, but it's a floor.
What I'm saying?
The thing is, if that's the floor, that's a sign of a losing coalition. So I'll tell you what does occur to me. It may take a while, but if you're in an 1850s sort of environment, what could happen, and it could be dangerous to either side. It could absolutely end the Democratic Party as we know it, but also it could be dangerous to Republicans, is that in this kind of environment, a third party that only lasts for a little bit, if we have a two-party system, can be transformative. So you think of the Republican Party in the 1850s, right, which came out of nowhere, but all of a sudden the old party just collapsed, and the Whigs were gone, and then that party came to the fore. So, we haven't seen signs of that being serious yet. I mean, Musk's Talk of America party doesn't seem very serious to me yet. But this is the kind of situation in which that could occur, and then either side has to be careful because, that can totally change the dynamic. Because these numbers this is the sign of being a loser. I mean, this is something that's very hard to pull yourself out of without significant change.
Although every one of those 35% will vote. Mm-hmm. Every single one of them. Right. Sometimes more than once.
Yeah.
So that's the dangerous thing, is that core is completely and totally committed. They're the fanatics. They're the partisans. They're the people who will, they imagine themselves as les resistants, which probably was fake in the first place. They imagine themselves fighting in the woods against the fascist invaders, as we saw with those Antifa dudes who got routed by police officers. Yes. They didn't get routed by special forces. They got routed by police. Like, they're not as dangerous as I think they are, but that is the commitment levels that they're going to bring to the voting booth as well. And Republicans have always had an issue with this. In the midterms, Donald Trump won't be on the ballot. I think there's two Republican senators who won, who outperformed Donald Trump in the election. And some of these people, like in Texas with Ted Cruz, it was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of votes that Trump outperformed. So when they're not on the ballot,
Right.
he's not on the ballot, it's going to be difficult. And you have to wonder, Barack Obama was extremely popular, and he hasn't been able to move a vote since he left office. Not one. Doesn't matter if Bruce Springsteen and Beyonce come. He can't move anything. Oh, he can only get people to vote for him.
Right.
And is that a risk with Trump? I know we can get people to vote against. I know we can get money to pour in. People say now it's not worth running in a primary if Donald Trump backs the other guy. You just hang up your hat and go home. But with actually motivating the voters, that's always just a harder case to make.
Yeah, the Democrats know a little social unrest is definitely the way to get their base riled up. Let's go ahead and move on to the top Democrat, because there's still the debate over Biden's mental health and his fitness. And you know what? Who's behind the Autopen? Well, even the New York Times was admitting that the legacy questions are striking a nerve with the former president. We had a 10-minute phone call, if you guys can believe it. He was able to talk for 10 minutes. I think that in and of itself is impressive with the New York Times. But when we look at the Autopen scandal, the more information that we get about this, the worse I believe it gets for Joe Biden, right? Our friend Mike Howell over at Oversight Project, him and his group have done great work on this. And it just looks like, these group of staffers that, they were in the room. Well, they weren't actually in the room when Biden was making these decisions, but they decided, that this is what Biden had wanted them to do. So then they went through and said, okay, that's fine. We can go through and use the Autopen and do the preemptive pardons for people like a Mark Milley, a Dr. Fauci, right? We know this list. And I feel like every time we get a new information dump about the Autopen, it's just so much worse every time.
Yeah, and this is something where, again, the good guys are winning. I mean, why? Because they're fighting. They haven't let this issue go. Every day you see more and more damning evidence that this was far worse than we know, even though a lot of us know, or people in the audience know. But more reality is coming forward and going all the way back to the beginning of Biden's administration, as we've said before on the show. So the work Howell is doing, that's the Lord's work. There's a lot of other people doing this. And the sign, just the big picture here is, the New York Times has to come out and deal with this now. And Biden has to be trotted out to start rambling, because he's trying to save a legacy that is rapidly eroding in real time in front of the American people. And this thing has legs. It's not going to go away, because there are legal issues involved. There are ramifications that are exceedingly important to the efficacy of having constitutional government in the office of the executive in the first place. We can't have a president if this sort of thing happens. So this is something where you see the pushing is working, the good work on the part of the administration is working, and they have to keep pushing to bring this all the way home, because what you want is a majority of Americans, even if you were a Democrat, to admit reality and say, oh gosh, but I don't support this. This was wrong.
Yeah, and Chris, I look at this and say, even if we don't like the New York Times on the right, well, this is a good sign, because now you have the New York Times covering Autopen and going deep into this. This means that this is going to be a story that sticks around, that people are actually going, even if you were a leftist who didn't want to believe it for a very long time, well, now the New York Times is actually addressing this, asking Joe Biden questions about it. That to me shows, okay, this is a story that is going to have legs, as Matt says.
So Sarah, my beautiful wife, highlighted on Twitter earlier. She's been on this story. This is a conversation around our dinner table at night.
This is one of them.
She highlighted this graph from the story that says the emails show that an aide to Mr. Siskel, who was a lawyer for Joe Biden, sent the draft summary of Mr. Biden's decisions at that meeting to an assistant of Mr. Zients, who was his counselor, copied Mr. Siskel at 10:03 p.m. The assistant forwarded it to Mr. Reed and Mr. Zients, asking for their approval, and then sent a final version to Ms. Feldman, copying many meeting participants and aides at 10:28 p.m. 3 minutes later, Mr. Zients hit reply all and wrote, I approve the use of the Autopen for the execution of all the following pardons. Now, two things. Zients is not the president. He didn't say the president approves. He said, I approve. Unlike many aspects of the federal government, the Constitution explicitly grants this superhuman power to pardon federal crimes, not in the White House, not in the executive, not in the assistants of the president.
Not even if it's chief of staff, it doesn't matter.
They can rent the balcony at the Kennedy Center. If you're an AP, you're pretty important. You can't grant a pardon. Only the president can, not Mr. Zients. So people are happily touting that the New York Times, got the story out. But as Sarah wrote, this is simply not evidence that exonerates Biden. And its release in this way has all of the hallmarks of Team Biden soft launching what GOP-led investigations are about to find. And I think that's the case. This investigative journalism is coming from inside the White House. Yep. It's coming from Team Biden, and they're trying to get out ahead because this is their favorite thing. First, they say it's not happening. First, they say you're conspiracy theorists and it's not happening. Then they say it happened, but it's old and it doesn't matter. And then there's no point where they say, all right, that was really bad, unconstitutional, and completely insane. It's just it's either this is a right-wing conspiracy, it's not happening, fine, it happened, it didn't matter. And that's the stage that they're moving on to now.
Yeah, no, well said. And because the New York Times never gets out in front of left-leaning power. Like they do not speak truth to power. They exist to speak the truth that power on the left wants them to speak.
And Wordle.
And here, yes, and Wordle, and their product line, their reviews,
Vacations
where they make
to
their
Iran, different things,
where they make their real money. But here with the New York Times, they're always about this. When it's important enough, the signal here is that it's important enough for them to get out in front of it. What they actually try to do in the article is egregious. Like if you read this thing, it's illogical. It's almost insane the way in which they're trying to defend what happened. But this is because, again, the good sign is this is because they know that this is going to be bad. They know they need to defend the narrative, and they need to come up with a narrative. This is something that I think is a lot of times I don't like these stories where the right is trying to get in the brain of the normie, get in the brain of the normal person and switch the majority of people, because the right is historically not very good at it. But this is something that's just indefensible. And so I actually have a lot of hope that this narrative that they have to put together is really indefensible. It's very hard in front of people who aren't very political or aren't hardened leftists. So I think this is a good thing for all concerned, but we have to keep pushing on the truth.
And when you look at how big of a deal is this, let's look at some of the numbers themselves, because we know that FDR was president for 12 years. How many clemencies did he grant? Well, it was about 3,700, right? 3,796 over a span of 12 years. Joe Biden had 4,245 in just his 4 years. Now, 96% of all of those acts came in his last year of office. So, Chris, they were very busy in that final year. Did Biden's mental health, did it get better or worse as time went on when he was president? So that's something to keep in mind, that 96% of all of these happened in his final year.
I mean, how many hours a day do you think he was fully functioning? I mean, listen, everyone in America, if they're lucky enough to have family and loved ones, knows people who have gone through age and people who they love. And you see the changes, and it starts slow. But and even at the end, you see there's moments of clarity and there are moments of not. And Mr. Joe Biden did not always have moments of clarity. Sometimes he did. Sometimes he was clear. Sometimes he was on task. But a lot of the time, especially towards the end, he was not. So 4,000 and something exonerations and pardons. How much time do you think you would have to spend on a pardon before you decided this judge was wrong and I am letting this person off? I assume more than 30 seconds. But let's say it's like 1 minute. Does anyone think that he spent more than 4,000 minutes or 60 in an hour on this? There's no way. Now, I understand that this was grouped into classes of crime. Crimes that the president didn't think fit with or his people didn't think should be punished anymore. And that would be whole write-offs with the Autopen. But even then, there's no way he was doing the homework. And this is serious constitutional problem. I remember the press flipping out when President-elect Donald Trump in 2016 sneaked off with his wife, ditched the press bowl, and went to a steakhouse to get a well-done steak. They flipped out and said, this is an assault on the Constitution. I'm sure, dude. He's a man of his generation. Maybe a little A1. But they don't seem to understand that this actual prerogative is extremely important. Way more important than the other stuff. The president hires, it's a massive operation. The president has to hire a lot of people to execute a lot of things on behalf of the president. This simply isn't one of them.
And it's not just Fauci and Mark Milley. Like J6 is going to come back up again. We're not done with the J6 stuff. And these were some of the preemptive pardons that we saw were members of the House for the House committee. We also saw some of the Capitol police officers. So I feel like all of this stuff is about to come back into the headlines.
Yeah, I mean, President Trump has been very good about keeping J6 justice in, full view, and that's been a good thing. I mean, the White House has hung on to this to make sure that justice is done there, and you can't really extricate that from this issue because they were trying to pardon these people. I mean, just the facts you mentioned. I mean, the fact that you have 2,400, pardons on January 17th, 2025, more than any other president in a single term. And then you're going to tell me that he did this. What they've done and what they tried to do with Biden is and they succeeded, it was make the office of the president a sort of empty box that an administration could shove whatever they wanted through it. It's sort of like they made it, an empty shadow of a person. Doesn't matter who the person is, but through the office of the presidency, his staff and the administrative state can sort of do whatever they want. And so they took away the actual prudential part of politics. They took away the fact that one man has to be in charge. That's the way the system works. With a presidency, one man has to be executive. And they made it a sort of committee of everyone, who's on the team by committee, ruling everyone else in America through this, this office that doesn't actually have a face, a person with a brain in it who's actually the decider, as one president once said. And when you don't have a decider, like you don't have our system of government. So that's what they did to rectify it. The justice in the past has to be pushed. And then when it comes to a lot of these people, I think a lot of people are excited about pardon or no pardon. Let's put this to the test, right? Yeah. Let's say the pardon was given by an Autopen and is therefore invalid. And then let's go after these people regardless. Let's accelerate and heighten the contradictions and bring some conflict.
Isn't this just the ultimate victory, his administration of progressivism, the way that you guys at Claremont have documented it and all along the way, where they created an unseen bureaucracy that existed outside of the government, but usually still, even Barack Obama pretended.
Right.
Usually still, there was one person in the entire country who's elected by the entire country, and that person is given a lot of power. John Adams wanted to call them His Majesty, and that was unpopular at the time. But now you're actually the person you're electing is an unseen bureaucracy of former Obama aides.
Yeah.
Operating out of Colorama.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And that's what we had.
It's crazy. These people still want the rule of law. I feel like that is just the moral of the show. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back to wrap it up right after this. I feel like there are a lot of questions coming out of tonight's show, right? What's going to happen with MAGA? Are the Democrats actually going to start imploding? Are we going to get, the summer of love? And what the heck is going on with the Autopen? Yet, I think the question that has really caught me by surprise, I had no idea that we would be talking about Elmo, but is Elmo an anti-Semite? Is this what we found online? Like this, I was not prepared for this. I knew USAID funding was going to be cut off, right? We had the Sesame Street funding over there in the Middle East. We're getting backlash from Elmo. Elmo was taken over. If you didn't see this, he was hacked. The account on X was hacked, and Elmo was saying some things that were definitely not appropriate for the children.
God bless you if you didn't see it. God, seriously, don't look. I was cooking dinner after our Sunday post-mass dinner. It takes forever for 6 people, and my friend said, "Oh my gosh, did you see this?" And I was like, "What? Did XRP crash? Are we all broke? What's going on?" He said,
"No, it did not."
Elmo's talking about Jewish people, and he's not talking about it in a friendly way. And I actually didn't know Elmo had a Twitter. I don't know if Elmo needs Twitter. He's a child and a Muppet. He's a puppet.
That's a good point.
But it is a pretty sick burn when Elmo calls people a puppet. I thought I was like, all right, that was clever. But this was, there's like funny internet trolling. Like, I don't know who got inside of Grok's head, but Grok dropped some insane stuff. And some of it was like, I don't think that's canon. But Elmo was just grimy. It was dark stuff. Stay off of Twitter, kids.
Yeah, dark Elmo.
Well, look, this is what happens here is that when Twitter goes off the rails or the internet goes off the rails, people are going to say whatever the most controversial thing, whatever the most offensive thing is possible to say. So there's
Why? What is that urge? It's like Randy in South Park. I don't get it.
There's a teenage boy, belligerent teenage boy who's rebellious.
Call of Duty
in the
kids.
soul of the algorithm, and it's always waiting to be unleashed. And especially in a society, but especially in a society in which you got a lot of young males, especially who have been so put upon. You're Karen. You're supposed to say this and that.
Does this live in the young man's heart?
Yes. So what they do is they figure out what's the most offensive thing I can be, and then they say that frickin' thing, right? So yeah, when Elmo becomes unhinged, dark Elmo, you're going to have, but anytime there's any kind of rebellion that's allowed to emerge and people want to get a rise out of other people, they're going to say the thing they're not supposed to say. And that's what we see
This
here.
was absolutely a man. To your point, there 50% of the population, innocent. The women, we did not do this.
There's no way that was a
There's
chick.
absolutely no way that Dark Elmo was from a woman.
All right. The women are not innocent, but
For this, they
this
are.
particular crime,
For this, they are.
That was fairly clearly a dude.
Yeah, it was
definitely a dude.
Definitely an autistic.
Probably not a
dude.
dude who gets out that much. Probably not a dude who had like a wife and kids where he was cooking dinner for. Probably
No, this is not a dude who knows many women.
But I will say this: if your child came to you crying and traumatized, because look at what Elmo said, you're a bad parent. Your kid shouldn't be on Twitter and they're looking at pornography. Get them off the internet. Who follows Elmo on Twitter? I hope it's only adults. Are there children on Twitter? Get them
I don't
off.
think so, but
Close
this is-
off the screens.
Yeah.
Steve Jobs giving an iPad to every classroom was not an act of charity. It was an act of mind-melting addiction. Get it out and get your kids off and unfollow Elmo. Honestly, you should never have followed Elmo on Twitter. It's like having a Disney watch as an adult. Don't do
I
it.
can't imagine. I just assume if there's an Elmo account,
Having
it's
a
a parody.
Disney watch?
Yeah, like a wristwatch, like
Yeah.
the Disney dudes. They're like into Disney.
It's like adults have Disney.
That's a specific message to a grown man I
It's a
know.
very specific thing. There's one man out there and he is talking directly to you.
Presumably, there's more. Maybe they are the types of people who follow Elmo on Twitter. I don't know. When I see an Elmo account, you think it's a parody. Like you think, oh, someone's Elmo meme with the flames.
I always
or whatever.
knew that Elmo was an anti-Semite because I've been to Times Square. I don't know if you've seen Times Square Elmo. Dude's been an anti-Semite for 20 years, and so help you God if you take his picture without giving him money, because he is dirty and he will follow you. Also, kids, stay away from the Times Square superheroes. They are not really heroes.
Yeah. They're not your friends. They're not your friends. Keep children far away from them.
Oh yeah.
At least, for all the problems that DC has, they don't have any of those.
We do not have people who dress up like Elmo. They dress up like homeless here. It's very normal.
I don't know that they dress up like homeless. They might just be homeless.
Some of them.
I
Some of
think
them.
you need
Some of
more.
them do.
Some of them do.
DC needs more like drunk people wandering around who are like jolly, dressed up like the founding fathers. Kind of like the guy who dresses up like Santa Claus on Halloween, who's just like hammered.
We
That
had
would
a
be
guy
good.
outside the Daily Caller office we called Bad Santa.
Yeah.
He looked jolly. He was not jolly. Holy smokes.
Well, this is just proof that there is not a dull moment since Donald Trump took office. We know that there is going to be still so much more to talk about with MAGA, and we will do so, but we'll be back here tomorrow with another episode from the swamp. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you back here then.